learning how to use SQL is really, really great for understanding how to interact with data. And as a GIS professional, I find it very valuable. I'm Sean Morgan. Let me show you how to get started. The SQL tutorial on the W3 Schools website is wonderful. It gives you a nice guide. It goes through all the different things you would want to learn on how to use SQL. And it's step by step, and you can literally just go through the website and work through it. It even has these try it examples. And the try it examples bring up this other page, and you can run the SQL and it will go do things. And you can even modify the SQL and it will do what you're asking. So it's a really great tool to be able to learn. However, getting a database on your computer and getting that running, that can be a little bit challenging and a little bit really challenging if you can't install stuff on your computer. Let's say it's a work computer. Well, the nice thing is if you have Microsoft Office, you likely already have a database on your computer, and that is Microsoft Access. And Microsoft Access has this hidden setting that allows it to actually work, sort of how the W3 Schools website works. So let me just show you how to set up the Microsoft Access to work with these queries and work very similarly. In particular, let me give you one example. Wildcards on SQL inside of W3 Schools use a percent as the wildcard character. So basically, anytime you see this, it'll match anything that starts with it. So this is where customer name is starts with A, or if I change this to B, it'll be B, or if I do BE, it would have to be B and E together, and etc. So this percent means any character. However, in Access, it uses different characters. By default, it uses a star here. So if I wanted to create a new query, and we'll switch this over to SQL view, and we'll select star from parking tickets main, where, and we'll just bring up the data. Let's just do location 1 like, and if we did a percent in here, it should return this first entry. But unfortunately, it returns nothing. And that's because by default, Access uses its own wildcards, which is a star. And if we view that, now it actually returns it. But this gets a little confusing, and no other real databases use the star. Most of them use percent. So we can actually switch how this tool works inside of Microsoft Access so that it is using what's called the ANSI standard for SQL. So really easy to do that. Let's just do that right now. So in the database, first of all, we'll quit this and we'll just save our query really quickly because we're going to have to exit out of the database once we do this. But if you go to File and then go to Options, inside of the options, there's a whole bunch of different options to change things. And in particular, the Object Designers has this SQL Server compatible syntax option, ANSI 92. And if we turn this on for this database and hit OK, it'll tell me that it's going to change things around. It'll reopen it. And then if I reopen my query and I change this back to my percent, you can see now it works properly. It works the exact same way as the W3 Schools website. And if we go back and change it back to the default that is Access, now that doesn't work. So it's important to recognize that the Microsoft help won't work now. But now this version of SQL that's in here is pretty much the same version that's on the W3 Schools website. So now the two correspond. So you can actually learn what you're doing in the W3 Schools website, and then you can apply it into your own Access database. Pretty cool. Let me give you one more tip. The default font that is inside of here is terrible to read. It's just really challenging to see anything. It's a very small 8-point font, and it's proportional, meaning that the characters don't take all the same space. So an I takes up a little bit of space, and a W takes a lot of space, and O's and zeros look very similar. It becomes just a big mess. So I've changed this to a different font, and that's actually in the exact same setting area. So if I go back to Options after clicking on File, Object Designers, and then in here, I can change the query design font, and I can make it whatever I'd like. And this Segoy font that is the default, I've changed it to Courier New, and I've set the size a little bit larger to be able to make it so that I can use it. And now, the font is much clearer. So that's how I got the font nice and clear. Now, recognize that if you do make these two changes, it will only apply to new items that have opened, but once they've opened, it is that way. Any queries that you have saved and then reopen, you might need to go through and change whatever is there, but once you've made that change and saved that query, now it's permanent. So you don't need to constantly do this. And if you notice, let me go back into the settings, so Options, Object Designers. This was only for the current Access database. This is not the default for new databases, but if you would like to do that, you can set this option, and therefore every database you open will have this setting. Just beware, if you share this database with anybody else and they open it up thinking it's Access, the queries and things are expecting ANSI 92 style, not the default, which is Microsoft's version of SQL. So something to be aware of. As well, if you do see this grayed out and you do want to undo it, it's because there's a setting change somewhere. So if I just make a couple of spaces in there, you can see now this becomes grayed out. And that's simply because a query is open and not saved. As you can see, if I try to quit, it's because I hit a couple of spaces in there. It wasn't saved. So a couple little settings for you to be able to get started with Access and using the W3 Schools SQL site. Hopefully that helps you out.